Hi, this is Daryl Meyer from Keller, Texas. Today is Monday, November 22nd, 2010. Please forgive me for being so late today. It's been a crazy busy day, and I'm just now getting to this. Is it just me, or is anyone else noticing all the UFO reports lately? It seems like you can't cruise the internet, you can't look up stories, you can't go to CNN or Fox or any of these channels without seeing UFO reports. Now, here's something I believe. I think if the rapture happens prior to the tribulation or prior to the return of Christ, then the world will use the alien abduction story for explaining to the rest of the world why so many people have disappeared. Now, again, the rapture is one of those contentious subjects that Christians can certainly argue about. I don't know that the rapture will occur prior to the tribulation or the return of Jesus. I tend to be one of those post-trib believers, but I pray for a pre-trib. But if the rapture does happen, the world will say, "Oh, they were all taken from aliens, from UFOs." And we're seeing this happen now. There's movies out right now. There's one coming out, I think, next week or so, that their caption is, "Don't look up." It goes against the very thing the Bible tells me. In fact, Jesus said, "Look up, for your redemption draweth nigh." So, let me just go through some of these. This out of the Examiner.com. A pillar of light reported west of Tennessee's Roan Mountain. That was November 18th. And here's another one. Witnesses spot UFO flying low and silent over New Hampshire, also on November 18th. That out of UFO Digest. And they've been spotted in Arizona, New Mexico, California. Here's a story out of AOL News, says Dorito-shaped UFO spotted over Britain. They dubbed it the Dudley Dorito because it was seen in the British town of Dudley. So what is all this about? And this leads me into this next story out of WorldNet Daily. I told you about this a couple of weeks ago, but I want to confirm this to you again. This story says, "Take me to your leader. UN is preparing to appoint the first UFO ambassador." Remarkably, the United Nations is on the verge of appointing its first ambassador to aliens, as in UFOs. Jerome Corsi's Red Alert reports, the most likely candidate to fill the job is Malaysian astrophysicist Mazian Othman, current director of the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, or UNOOSA. UNUSA. Sorry. But what's going on? Does the UN know something that the rest of us don't know? Is there a reason to be concerned that we need a world government ambassador to be in place, ready to talk with extraterrestrials right now? Or is this just more of the typical UN worthlessness, silliness that they've demonstrated over the past several decades? Your guess is as good as mine, but apparently they feel the need for appointing this 68-year-old scientist. He's thinking massive ships would colonize Earth and plunder the planet's resources. He says, if aliens ever visit us, I think the outcome would be much as when Christopher Columbus first landed in America, which didn't turn out very well for Native Americans. Okay, well, you know what? I trust in God, because my God is bigger than any UFO invasion, any aliens, or anything else the prince of darkness of this world can throw at me. My God is bigger, stronger, and Jesus has already overcome this world. He's overcome sickness. He's overcome death. He is in me, so I have overcome these things also. No fear. Can't live in fear. Fear is not from God. It's from the enemy. Enemy? Here's a story out of IsraelNationalNews.com. Obama's UN officials are silent on 9 anti-Israel resolutions. The United Nations Human Rights Council this month adopted 9 resolutions against Israel. The United States opposed nothing. There's a big shock, isn't it? Not unusual seeing the Obama administration and his minions going against Israel, going against America, in fact, saying we're no longer a Christian nation, even though 76% of Americans claim to be Christian. That, to me, says we are a majority still in this country, whether the president likes it or not, whether he wants to believe it or not. I don't know if you're familiar with the Muslim way of life, but part of their book, the Quran, tells them it's okay to lie to non-believers to advance the Muslim agenda. This is what Obama's doing. He says he's a Christian, yet watch what he does. He bashes the Bible. He makes fun of it. I've got videos on my channel. You can go and look at it where he's making fun of verses in the Bible. You think we should follow the Bible? Well, which verse? And he starts bashing the Bible. And then he's constantly praising the Quran, the beautiful Quran. How he says the call to prayer is the most beautiful sound he's ever heard on the face of the earth. Strange thing for a Christian man to say, wouldn't you think? It's because he's not one. Anyway, the Council, engaged in a universal periodic review of human rights protection in Lebanon, was examining a report by that country which expressed its objections to the establishment of the Zionist entity on Palestinian territory. Every United Nations member state was asked to submit a report to the Council on its national human rights record, which was then reviewed by UN members who engage in a short dialogue with the state representatives. After Lebanon submitted its report objecting to the creation of the State of Israel, Israel's representative responded, "My delegation would like to state on record our strong objection to the inappropriate and abusive language used to reference the State of Israel. Unfortunately, the existence of a dominant terrorist organization, Hezbollah, as well as political tensions and struggles between different vital groups," and then he was cut off. Israel's presentation was rudely interrupted by the Council President, the delegate from Thailand, who broke in to summarily recognize the delegation of Lebanon. "If there were no Israeli occupation," he said, "there would have been no resistance, and resistance of peoples against foreign occupation is a legitimate right. Thank you," the Lebanese delegate stated firmly, to a hall which broke into applause. The Council President followed up, "I appreciate the concern expressed by the Lebanese delegation." Other UN HRC members responded with a verbal assault against the Israeli diplomat, which was not stopped by the Obama administration representative either. "There is no other terrorism on the surface of the planet like the terrorism committed by Israel," claimed the Syrian delegate. "The entity was established on the basis of terrorism." Another comment by Syria, "Israel threatens to use nuclear weapons." And still another, "Lebanese resistance is not terrorism." So, you can read in Joel 3:2, in Zechariah 12, and Zechariah 14, where it talks about the whole world coming against Israel. And we've never really seen it happen until now. And I used to always wonder, how could America ever go against Israel? We're their best friend. And granted, for 62 years now, we have been. But now with this current administration, we're not very friendly to Israel under the Obama administration. Why? Because he's a Muslim. And he's there for a reason. Here's a story out of Haaretz.com. Abbas eyes a UN appeal for independent state as peace talks stall. It says, with little progress in U.S. attempts to broker a new settlement freeze, the Palestinians could seek world recognition for an independent state. Palestinian leaders will meet in the coming days to form a backup plan in case talks with Israel fall through, a West Bank official said Sunday. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas will consult with leaders of his Fatah faction over the contingency program, which could involve bypassing the U.S.-sponsored peace process to seek statehood through the United Nations, the PLO official said. Here's a question I have. If the UN suddenly says, okay, we recognize Palestinian or a Palestinian state, where are they going to put them? Are they going to force Israel to give up part of their land? Why don't they force some of these Muslim countries to give up part of their land since the Palestinians are Muslim? Why put them in a Jewish state? Why not put them in Jordan, Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, any of the other 20-some-odd Muslim states in the Middle East? Why has it got to be Israel? Because the Bible prophesies it, that's why. Here's a story out of Depicted.com. New Syrian Hezbollah guided missiles defy Israel's aerial supremacy. Israeli military intelligence chief Major General Amos Yadlin took his leave from the Israel cabinet Sunday with a stern warning saying Tel Aviv will be a front line in the next conflict. Depka Files military sources report Syria and Hezbollah now possess thousands of surface missiles from Iran with enhanced ranges up to 300 kilometers, and they're being outfitted by Iranian engineers with guidance systems. This is certainly going to step it up for Israel. Their odds are getting smaller and smaller. But you know what? Their God is bigger than any other country's arsenal that can possibly come against them. The Bible says no weapon formed against you will prosper. and the world is about to see this prophecy. Okay, this out of the HuffingtonPost.com. I've told you recently about the U.S. Hillary Clinton stating that Israel is in the same category as North Korea, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and some of these other countries like China that have no freedom of religion. Well, religious freedom advocates are urging members of the United Nations to vote against the latest proposal from Islamic countries to combat defamation of religions. The Organization of Islamic Conference successfully sponsored similar resolutions as a way to address religious persecution. I'm not going to read this whole story because I've got some other things I want to get to. Here's something out of ABC News. I know, I don't use them, but they had the best take on this story. I've seen this story. But Al-Qaeda promises U.S. death by 1,000 cuts. Terror group boasts that the printer bomb only cost them a little over $4,000 and it was meant to bleed the U.S. economy. Okay, this attempt was called Operation Hemorrhage, and they are trying to make the United States spend billions of dollars to beef up our security to keep things like this out of our country. They said they've got a lot more of them planned, and they're going to bring America to its knees. Have you seen the latest cover of Newsweek? I urge you to go have a look at it. Newsweek depiction of Obama as Lord Shiva upsets some Indian Americans. Newsweek's depiction of President Obama on the latest cover has irked some Indian Americans who, fresh off Obama's visit to the world's largest democracy, are not happy with the image of the U.S. President as the Hindu deity, Lord Shiva. The Newsweek cover shows Obama with several arms, carrying policy issues while balancing on one leg, with a headline that reads, God of all things, with a subtitle, Why the Modern Presidency May Be Too Much for One Person to Handle. God of all things. That brings me right into today's Bible study. I've been talking about the cross. In Matthew 26:39, it was talking about Jesus, he says, He went a little further and fell on his face and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Now, first of all, Muslims, don't tell me that just because Jesus fell on his face and prayed that he's a Muslim, okay? Because falling on your face and praying no more makes you a Muslim than me standing in my garage makes me a car, okay? So, don't all paths lead to heaven? It's a good question. That's the question being asked in countless classrooms and break rooms around the globe. If you watch Oprah, she says, oh, God's whoever you want him to be, right? Oprah, poor deluded Oprah with all her money. She's got her reward in full, let me just say that. But our world is under the impression that every faith and every religion that exists is equally effective in saving one's soul. It doesn't matter if someone's a Christian, Muslim, Jew, Buddhist, Hindu, Scientologist, Mormon, or whatever else. What they believe really doesn't matter. All that truly matters is their sincerity about what they believe, right? Jesus indirectly, but definitively, answered this one for us. On the night before he was crucified, Christ cried out to his Father, saying, If it is possible, let this cup pass from me. What was he saying there? The cup refers to the Father's wrath towards sin, which Jesus would taste on our behalf on the cross. Now, notice that Christ asked to be spared this experience, if it is possible. In other words, Jesus was saying, Father, if there's any other way to satisfy your wrath towards sin, if there's any other way out there for man to be saved, if there's any other path that leads to heaven, then please spare me the horror of this cross. But the Father did not grant this prayer. He didn't allow the cup of wrath to pass from Jesus because he knew there was no other way to satisfy his wrath toward our sin. There was no other way for man to be saved. There was no other path that would lead us to heaven. If there were, then the cross would not have been necessary. Don't all paths lead to heaven? The answer is no, and the cross declares this by virtue of its very existence. Let me go to Matthew 7, verse 13 through 14. Jesus said, Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go by it. Because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it. Let me go to John 10:9. And this is Jesus. He says, I am the gate. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved. There's only one way to God the Father, and that's through Jesus Christ the Son. John 14:6, Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. These are words of truth, people. The quicker you learn this, the better off you'll be. God bless you. Hope to see you again tomorrow.